I knew nothing about Edgewood College when I got here. I was 22 years old, wanted to get into college coaching, had an opportunity with Coach Larson to come here and loved Madison. So I thought, what a great place to start. And I thought 1 year, 2 years, go on to the next job and just, move your way up the ladder that way. And a lot of things fell into place, starting with the amount of opportunity I was given with Coach Larson and just being at the back end of his career. And so that was one thing that was appealing. I got my hands involved in a lot of things early, and I learned a lot early, sometimes good, sometimes bad. When you're learning on the fly like that as a young coach, you're going to make mistakes, certainly. But so that part was appealing to me, but more so it's just, you asked about family earlier, and one thing I've always valued about this place is I do feel like it's like a family. I think the message of what the school wants to be fits in really good with what I want our program to be about, what I want our athletic department to be about. Wins and losses will always be important in athletics, but I think there's so much more to it. I think as important as wins and losses in athletics, especially collegiate athletics, is making sure you're winning and losing the right ways. You're winning with grace, you're winning by following rules and not cutting corners. You're losing with grace, and you're learning lessons through losing. So I feel like all those things that Edgewood values really mesh well with what I appreciate and value as a person, and we can carry that over into our program. So between those two things and what a wonderful place this is to be, not only a college student, but a pre-college graduate, and now as we're finding out, starting and raising a family, it's been home. It's been home for me. I've had 2 siblings go to school here and graduate from here since I started coaching here, and so yeah, it's home. I'm going to give you 2 because one's an obvious one that I have to answer. 2012 conference championship game here against Lakeland. That was the largest crowd I've ever seen. We were turning people away at the door. We won a great game against Lakeland, and then we go on and we beat River Falls in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So I think anytime you do a number of things that hasn't been done in school history, that's always going to be special. So that one's right up there. The Cy Staver moment's great, but I actually bypassed that because without beating Benedictine, who was the best team in the league, beating them at home, without that win, we don't get into the postseason. That was our postseason. Basically started 3 games before that. I forget what it was, but we had to win 3 or 4 in a row just to get into the postseason at that point. And to beat that Benedictine team, who was 2 years removed from a national championship game, and they were really good. And we had played them, and gotten beat pretty soundly earlier in the year. Truth be told, if we played them 10 times, we might have won 2. But the effort that those guys gave that day to get us to that point was something I will never forget. Just all the things that fell into place, and to do it on senior day and to do it in this building is right up there with one of my favorite moments. It is unique. I don't know that I've ever coached or played or been in a gym where you can't communicate 10 feet away with the players on the court. So even in practice, it's really hard for them to hear. So for us, we're used to that. We're used to that noise. For opposing teams, even when you're here every year, you forget what it's like when you're playing 24, 23 other games in different venues. So I think that's unique. I think the structure itself, just the architecture of it, when you look up to the ceiling and you take a look at the beams and the wood, and I think you kind of appreciate what that looks like. And I think they also appreciate when we do have big crowds here. We've had the opportunity the last couple of years. Everybody on this team right now has had the opportunity to play in front of some of those crowds, and like I tell them, you have to earn those crowds. They're not going to come. They're not going to come out to watch if you're not very good, or probably even more so than that, if you're not playing hard and doing those things. People want to just watch people competing and playing hard, and when you do that and you get involved in the campus community and in the Madison community, you give people a reason to come watch. there's not a better place. I don't care what anybody says. I don't think there's a better place in Division III basketball to watch a game and listen to a game than this building. And you know, it's not the most pleasing to the eyes. It's an older building. I think we've done a lot of great work with it, but from a game day atmosphere standpoint, there's no better place. And I think our guys have really bought into that. And we do talk about, you know, be proud of what you have, and this is what we have. So I think they take pride in being proud of it. You know, I think everybody wants to play, right? And if you don't want to play, what are you doing at this level? And so I think it's important. We talk about that every year. If we have 18 on the roster, my expectation is we have 18 guys that want to play. And if you don't, then you probably shouldn't be doing this at this level. But you also have to accept what role you earn on the team. And for somebody like Caleb Hill, who has a chance, you know, to get in the rotation again this year and has been close at times, but just hasn't gotten there. I can tell you there isn't a single person on that team that respects him less because he hasn't played a lot of minutes. Because they see the hard work, they see the way that he does things exactly how we ask them to do. And when you have that, when you actually live out, you know, you practice what you preach and you live out what you preach, like a kid like Caleb Hill does, it's really easy to respect that. And so you don't have success without players like that. It's the equivalent of the guy who plays defense on the best player every game. It's the equivalent of the guy who gets the rebounds, who takes charges, who does things that don't show up in a box score maybe all the time. You need all those pieces, and so we talk a lot about leadership, and it's funny, the one thing I've always noticed, whether it's as an assistant coach, as the head coach, the teams that we have had here that have been the best have been the teams that need the coach's voice the least. And it's because your leadership is saying those things every day. And it goes in waves. You know, I got spoiled for a couple years when we had guys like Dylan Roosh and Joe Klosik, Tal Diekvoss, that whole group. Before them it was Ben Wisniewski, Kent Farote, Derek Kemji. Recently it was 2 years, you know, when Jake and Ben and Caleb and all these guys were freshmen. They didn't hear my voice a ton because we had Cy Staver, we had Travis Kell, we had Emmel, we had McLean that really took ownership of it. Last year, even though we had a bunch of juniors, we only had Jacob Miller as a senior, and those guys were so used to hearing those voices that it took a little bit of time, and I found my voice having to be needed a little bit more. And so it drives them crazy when I go off on my stories and my tangents. Because I can take a 2-minute answer and turn it into a 20-minute lecture. And I always tell them, the best way for you not to have to hear those is for you guys to take ownership of it. Because if you tell them why they shouldn't be doing that, if you head that off, you know, if a jersey's untucked during practice, I shouldn't have to correct that. They should take ownership and do that. And when they do that, it just means so much more. And we've always had, our best seasons have been the years when that's been the case.